where we will continue to discuss the proposed SAISD 2023-2024 budget. Thank you. I haven't even gotten started yet. It's the voice of God. The date is Monday, March 27th, 2023, and the time is 5:38 p.m. And I shall now call this meeting to order. The first call on the agenda is a roll call of the board members present and a declaration of a quorum. Trustee Radel. Here. Trustee Valdez.
Here.
Trustee Garza.
Present.
Trustee Sebastian.
Here.
Trustee Ozuna.
Here.
And Trustee Sorensen is running a little bit late, but she should be here. I declare a quorum present, and the record shall reflect that our superintendent, Dr. Jaime Aquino, is also present. We are going to skip the ceremonials for today. We do not have anyone signed up for our citizens to be heard presentation. But before we start with the first item on the agenda, I do want everyone to go around and just introduce themselves, just because we are recording this. So I want to make sure everybody knows who's in the room. So I'm going to pass the mic around this way, and then we'll have another mic for our other staff that are on the outside there.
Marcel Page, Sam Houston.
Me too. Oh, Alicia Sebastian, Vice President of the Board.
Ed Garza, board member.
Kenneth Thompson, Deputy Superintendent Operations.
Chris Martinez, Chief of Human Capital Management.
Jill Rhodes Pruitt, Deputy Chief Human Capital Management.
Melissa Guerra, Director of Compensation.
Tony Thompson, Chief of Staff.
Leticia Ozuna, Board Member.
Patty Radel, Board Member.
Art Valdez, Secretary of the Board.
I'm Dottie Carrion, Chief Financial Officer.
Jaime Aquino, Superintendent.
Teresa Uravazo, Chief of Data Operations and Services.
Laura Short, Chief Communications Officer, Interim Chief.
Eva Mendoza, Chief Information Technology Officer.
Ana Alicia Romero, Director of Legislative and External Affairs.
Valinda Salas, Director of Planning and Budget. Teresa Mendoza, Board Coordinator.
Lourdes Martinez, Chief Internal Auditor.
Ajane Knowles, Brackenridge High School.
Arturo Martinez, Brackenridge High School.
Apollo Sandoval, Brackenridge High School.
And Ajane, Arturo, or Apollo, do you want to say why you're here and why you're recording?
We are hoping to document what goes on during one of these conferences and maybe bring it to people who are interested.
They're part of the Media Film Institute at Brackenridge High School, and they have been shadowing me in some work, and they wanted to be able to record. So they came early to set up their own camera and everything. So thank you for being here.
Hi, Alejandra Lopez, President of the San Antonio Alliance.
Chris Sally, Senior Executive Director for Facility Services.
Hello, Jeremy Lundin. I'm a candidate for school board.
John Lawler, Controller of the Buttons.
Dana Kinney, babysitter of John Lawler.
Eugene Gonzalez, Executive Director, Information Technology.
Mario Rios, Communications Office.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Just wanted everyone to know who's in the room with us. And so now we will move on with our discussion regarding the proposed SAISD 2023-2024 budget.
Thank you, President Martin, and good evening, everybody. Today's budget session is primarily about our always learning pillar, our staff, our strength. That's going to be the focus of this update on our budget. We're going to spend most of the time talking about proposed compensation increase that acknowledge the value that we, the board and the administration, put on our staff. On the purpose of why we are here is we're going to discuss different compensation options for the board to explore for the school year of 2023-2024 that will allow us to make sure that we attain our mission of transforming our school district into a national model of urban school district where all students graduate and are ready for the next part of their life. The process today is we're going to have discussion and Q&A. We also want to solicit input from each of you so that we can finalize our compensation increases. Obviously, we were still working to the last minute to putting all the different options before this, so we didn't send it to you beforehand. We're going to go slow. Please stop us at any time. Any question, don't wait till the end. Let's make this interactive so that making sure that you understand each of the options that we are providing. Our payoff at the end of this will be to provide our employee with a compensation plan that not only meets the regional markets standard, but also remains within a sustainable 5-year budget plan and acknowledges the value that we put on our staff. Okay, so our agenda for today, we're going to start with something that we began discussing and we had a lot of staff at the last board meeting, is the new campus administrative guidelines, just question and answer, just any lingering question. That's not the focus of today, but we gave you a presentation with details and we wanted to give you an opportunity if there's any question. Then we're going to move into a legislative update as it relates to our financial situation. We're going to talk about our budget values, and then we're going to do a quick review of the revenue and expenditures assumptions for the school year 23-24. And the bulk of our time is going to be spent talking about compensation package options as well as strategy for sustainable budget. And then we'll end with next steps in terms of how do we proceed from here. So we go to the campus administrative guideline. As I said, we just put this slide, which was the summary. We did a budget workshop on this and it was an interactive. So do you want to open it up based on the information you received last week, if there are any questions regarding this topic?
It's not a question, but I did reach. Okay, not a question, but I did want to comment that I reached out to a couple principals and to let them know that, you know, I had been through they both answered back saying they really appreciated the issue of the autonomy. And I felt good about that. And, you know, for all, again, for all questions that I might have, and I don't have many after going through all of those, but it's just the statement that if we're going to offer the autonomy, then the measures of how it comes out are very, very important. And I think we mentioned this at the meeting, but I just wanted to emphasize that if we're going to say, yeah, here it is, you got it.
We're
going to say, well, did you give it? Did you give it back?
Thank you, Trustee.
I've got a question. I've been getting a lot of calls about why are we getting rid of librarians? And I just want to make sure that we reiterate from the district that we are not getting rid of librarians. It's mostly assistant librarians that we're kind of pulling out. But we are having school librarians at every school so far, because I've been getting a lot of calls that.
So let me clarify. We're not cutting library services.
Right.
Library service. There are possibility in some places where the principal had decided using the flexibility and autonomy, maybe because they couldn't afford to, because they were a small school, but they had to do a different structure. So they all going to offer library services. Some of them will reduce their librarians and have a library assistant. And in terms of that, they're having other ways of providing library service. We don't anticipate that this is going to cause a reduction in force. I think with attrition, we can accommodate that. And I will direct you to some of the materials that we send you. We gave you the history and bullets too, so that you have the talking points. So we are not cutting any of the services. The way schools are going to achieve them is going to vary from one school to another. And a lot of this decision has to do with the comment that Trustee Garza made last week at a board meeting in terms of our footprint as our enrollment has decreased, our family is smaller, so some adjustment have had to be made.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll just make a couple comments. I did also just have a couple of conversations in the community. I think your point, Trustee Radel, to continue to say that is important. And I think the other thing we continue to say is that services are not being cut. And the community member brought up some good points about, well, this position particularly has been out in the community. They come to these meetings, they're doing these things. And so I do think really working with the schools and with the principals to identify what all of those services are, because we may think the services are just things that happen on campus, but really for some of these positions, they're broader than that. So I think there really needs to be a good inventory of all the different relationships that are being held right now, and making sure that those relationships continue, again, at the principal's discretion of who's going to do them. But the other piece of it is then the fidelity to those services, and I think we're looking to the team to figure out how we measure and monitor those services.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, President Martinez. Okay, so we're going to move for the second part of our agenda, which is our legislative update. I'm going to call on Alicia Romero, who's going to give us an update. Let me just be clear that this is a very brief update. This is not a full legislative update. We're going to do that at a regular board meeting. What I asked Ana Alicia was just to give us like what is getting traction or what's not getting traction. Because right now, as you know, no decision has been made. So nothing that you'll hear, we're taking into consideration. So we are assuming that we're not gaining at anything. So she will be doing at a regular board meeting and more detailed update that talk about school accountability and all the other stuff. But the question is here, what is happening as it relates to our potential impact on compensation or our finances?
Good evening, trustees and Superintendent Aquino. Just as Dr. Aquino has mentioned, we are in the middle of a legislative session. As of yet, no bills have been taken to the governor, including the House and Senate budget bills. A supplemental appropriations bill was filed in order for the state, allow the state to spend more than the constitutional limit. Right now, they're just moving. So they are starting to make their way through both chambers. What we know so far is that things will still be up for negotiation. What seems to be very clear is that the legislature is appropriating $5 billion for Article 3, which is the public education section of the state budget. That's as far as we know. What we know also is that there is a bill that prioritizes teachers, and that is Senate Bill 9, and it's one of the Lieutenant Governor's priority bills. That is important because it potentially has some compensation for our teachers today. So $2,000 for teacher across the board increase for teachers in districts that have an enrollment of above 20,000 students. And it also has a grant program to cover the surcharge for rehiring retired educators. And that's where we are right now. If you have any questions, I'll be available later. Thank you.
Yeah. You have a microphone.
Okay, I don't see this on the update, but I know the governor's pushing for the vouchers. Is this part of this legislative session for the
Yeah.
vouchers? Okay, so if, let's say he pushes for the vouchers and it passes. So does that take away any of the increase for the teachers or any money for schools if the vouchers do pass?
Yeah, I guess that's my question too, is what is the contingency plan, knowing that there's a possibility that this legislation might be passed, and how are we putting that in the budget or
Are-
thinking about it?
Yes, so are you talking about our budget or, which include also our compensation? So we are,
We lose students because
Of the voucher.
okay, yeah. So what we are assuming in our budget is that we're not getting anything from the state. No increase, either for compensation. We're not assuming that. We do have some money that we're reserving in the event that we lose students to if the voucher passes. Yeah. Any more questions for Analicia? Okay. Okay, well, now we're going to start talking about our budget. And I want to remind you of the share values that we have introduced since I began on this row as your superintendent. And I want to say why I want to highlight these values is because I believe that in the last year or so, we have done a good job at actually sharing, being honest with you and with the community about our financial situation so that everybody understands both the good and the bad. So that was one of our big values, which was this one on balance. The other piece, and I think I know Alejandra Lopez is here and I've heard her talk about this at our public meetings, is that we are being more transparent when it comes to our budget. And the last piece is that we have really tried to make this much more easy to understand. It is because of all of those values that we find today ourselves in a really good position to make decisions around compensation that also remain with the frame of having a sustainable long-term budget. We've made it clear, we know, and you will see that reflected. And finally, obviously, we want to make sure that we align everything. So now to talk about our next component, just to remind you, because you have seen this before, what are our revenues assumption as well as our expenditures assumptions for the school year 2023. I want to ask Dari Carrion, our Chief Financial Officer, to walk you through. You have seen this, but just to anchor our conversation, do you understand why we were able to come up with some of the proposed options that you'll see for compensation increase? Dari?
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Yes, we have shown all of these assumptions 1 month ago. And since at that time, we had just completed one of our 6-week periods, and it's only 4 weeks later, we do not have any real new PEMS data to basically change what's been shown previously. I did, however, look at like enrollment. It's still over 45,000 students, so it looks very stable. And my expectation is that we won't really have much of a change in the next snapshot that we get in a couple of weeks. So this is a chart that shows the historical student enrollment and ADA for funding purposes, and we're built our budget assumptions on the expectation of gaining 414 students next year and having a attendance rate of 90%. And then there's no change to this slide either, but basically some of our key assumptions for revenue is that we are not, We're not including any changes that may possibly come through from legislation, no change to basic allotment or any weights or any assistance with compensation. We're basically just assuming that we have the same model, revenue model that we have in place right now. We are, though, including, because it's already in statute, we're including the adjustment to the value of a golden penny. And as I mentioned last month, that's worth a little over $12 million to us for next year. So that's a big help to us. Student enrollment, 414 student plus, student attendance 90%. And we're making the assumption that our student demographics and all of the weights and programmatic pieces of our funding are mirroring the population that we have today. Then this is basically just a snapshot of the revenue that we're expecting for this year and for next year. And so what I don't have on the slide is basically what our original expectation was for 22-23, and that was 452 million. So we had talked last month about the pieces of additional revenue that we're going to earn this year that is increased our expectation for 22-23. And then we're expecting to retain all of those components, which are mostly property tax collection, interest revenue, and some additional special ed revenues. And on top of that, we're expecting the additional golden penny weight that's substantial. So those two components together is what makes up the next year's revenue assumption. Okay, and then on the expenditure side, again, we have a set of, is everything?
No.
Oh, a set of expenditures assumption. We want to let you know that we have included in, this year and also going forward, because it was a change to our projection from the prior year, that we've included the compensation increase that changed from 2% to 3% for this current year, 22-23. We are not yet building in a compensation increase for 23-24. And we're including the department budget reductions from this current year 22-23 of 16 million and 6.5 million of additional department budget reductions going into 23-24. We are including the $1.2 million savings that we realized from our campus admin guideline change. We are also including a increase in TRS mandated employer contribution, which they lay that out for us many years in advance. So we know that that's coming. We have an increase to absorb next year. Health insurance, at this time, we're not including any additional employer costs. We're expecting that to be able to be self-sufficient. Utilities, we're adding $1.1 million. And teachers, we're adding 33 additional teachers due to the enrollment increase. Yes.
Can you explain what you mean by the value of a golden penny for people
Yes,
who may not
to the best
understand?
of my ability. We did in 2016, we went out for a tax rate election where we asked the voters to increase our tax rate, our operating side tax rate by 13 pennies. And that's basically asking our local taxpayers to contribute more to the operations of the district. And those golden pennies are tied to the value of the state property wealth, so to speak. Each of those golden pennies is worth currently like $98 per weighted ADA. And it's a statewide calculation. It's tied to property values in the state. Well, I think last time I spoke about this, I mentioned that every biennium in statute, it adjusts to the new property values of the state. And last biennium, it adjusted from like $96 to $98. So it produced a little more revenue, but not a tremendous amount. But this year, for this biennium, it adjusted, don't have this figure ahead of me, but it's somewhere like $126 from 98 to 126. It's very substantial. It was surprising even to the people that calculate the number, but that is what's producing the $12 million. It's the state of Texas wide growth in property values over the last 2 years.
126 per 88.
Per weighted ADA. You're welcome.
And if we get our ADA up, that goes up even more.
Does.
exactly.
It does.
On the department budget reductions,
Yes.
is that campus reductions or is that district
No,
reductions?
that's all central
Just the-
office.
All central office.
Central office
Central
only.
And you'll
office.
see it later in the presentation.
And, district-wide budgets like, facilities maintenance and all of everything that is not in a campus.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. On the federal revenues,
Yes.
how do we compare to other districts and how much we draw down in federal revenues? And what's the opportunity to increase that? What opportunity is there? Are there
Okay.
districts that draw down more than we do?
Well, what you're seeing here on this schedule is only the federal that is in our local budget. So it's kind of a little bit of a misnomer. The major piece of that are two things. It's either our SHARS Medicaid reimbursements or it's our indirect cost revenue that we take when we manage grants. And all of our other federal revenues like title and, different grants and ESSER funds, those are actually not reflected here at all. It's part of our other funds that we're not really talking about with the adopted budget. But we, on a normal year with no ESSER, we generally have somewhere around $130, $140 million of federal funds. That includes child nutrition, which is about 42. But with ESSER, of course, it's a lot larger. So this is just a small piece of our federal. Yes, you're welcome. Okay, so this basically is just, this is an update to, since we first showed you our 6-year sustainability plan, this is a little catalog of all of the updates that we've made to the plan up until the point of just prior to discussing a potential compensation increase for this year. So for 21-22, we have updated it with all finalized audited data. For 22-23, I have a list of the things that we've included here, updated the pay raise, all the central office reductions and revenue impact from this year's, extra enrollment and our attendance, a little bit of a shortfall there. And then for 23-24, everything that we've talked about that we're projecting. And what I'm showing you at the very bottom of the slide is that when we first laid out our plan for right-sizing our budget and becoming sustainable, we had projected that we were going to have a $37.8 billion deficit. And because we've outlined numerous improvements in revenues and the significant cuts that we've made in central administration, at this time, prior to a compensation increase, we have trimmed that deficit back to 20 million. So that's basically the current state that we are looking at for the next year prior to discussing.
And this slide is really, really important as we move forward because we're going to bring this slide back after we discuss the compensation, the proposed compensations increases. If you remember, I remember this vividly because it was on my first day on the job where we had the budget workshop and we show you the financial outlook, which by 27-28, at that time, we were predicting a budget shortfall of $9 million. With the changes, both on the revenue and the cuts we did, we're actually ahead of what we have predicted, and we continue like that, you will see that our budget will have a surplus in the 27-28 of about $5 million. But that's without any compensation increase. You'll see that after we discuss the compensation increase because of the implication. This is why I think it's important because the story we're going to tell you is a really good story. I think it's a really good story for our employees. That also assumes that we are digging ourselves deeper in the hole, but we have a plan to address that, and you'll see it later.
So is this projection inclusive, is it all? Is this projection inclusive of if the enrollment stays the same today?
Yeah, this is.
What if it changes?
This is assuming that has been adjusted for the 400 more students that we're projecting for next year. Then it assumes that we remain stable. If we increase enrollment, we have more revenues. So this will be changed every year.
Right, but if not,
If we lose enrollment, this situation can be worse. And if our ADA decreases, the situation can be worse.
right.
But we have plans to do that.
Do these projections include ESSER funds?
No.
Okay.
This is only general funds. Today, we're only talking about general funds.
Okay.
Okay. But it does include, what this does include is things that we are covering in ESSER that in the future, if we want to continue with them, have to be observed by general funds in the 5-year plan. Does that make sense?
It actually,
Good microphone.
sorry. It does include, it counts those things that we're currently using ESSER for as local.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we know that's why we're showing transparently the deficit. We're not going to actually finish the year with a deficit because we're going to use our ESSER the way we've
Correct.
planned. And we're not going to adopt a deficit budget either because we're using ESSER that way. So this view is showing all of the local types of positions as if they were local.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that we can really see what our true deficit is and have a plan for it. But then the plan to the way we're utilizing ESSER comes,
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah,
I mean, we're not
because
showing it.
Again,
separately.
trustee Soren says, if we decide those that we're paying, which we're reflecting them, those that we're paying by ESSER, that technically we should be paying from general funds. If we decide when that happens, when the ESSER goes away, that we believe and the board believe in the community that we want to keep those roads, then that's why we will have to reflect a deficit.
Okay, we would have to find this. And then so I guess I'm thinking, so I mean, there's the ESSER funds that we've committed to pay, essentially for people, like we're paying
Mhm.
salaries.
Yes.
But then there's there's additional ESSER funds on top of that. Are there more available than what that we thought there would be because of some of the funding sources that we had? I mean, and when we looked at this, last year, really looking at like ESSER really being depleted and we were going to be in a horrible financial state within the next few years. So I'm just wondering, are there more
Okay.
ESSER funds available because we've had other sources of revenue or potential?
We're really on track with what we had laid out for the ESSER, but we are actually putting additional revenue away. Remember, we're saving revenue we did last year. We saved like $30 million and it's sitting in either general fund surplus or in our strategic initiatives fund, because that's what we showed as part of our 6-year plan. We were going to build up some additional reserves and then potentially draw them back down in years 4, 5, and 6. And so we're executing that plan. So in that regard, I want to say that, yes, there's additional, not really additional ESSER funds because they're all planned out for being used in the 3 years that we had them.
Mhm.
But we are building up reserves that are going to allow us to have the soft landing that we talked about. So they're potentially going to be drawn down in the last 3 years of our plan so that our final year deficits, as we work toward a balanced budget, those funds are there for that.
Okay.
So that we don't have the cliff that is
Yeah.
everyone's
Mhm.
talking
Oh,
about.
Okay.
So, but those funds, like last year, we had a large surplus in our general fund that is now there, and it is there specifically for that
Okay.
purpose.
And that was 30 million is what we've set aside this
yes.
year for that.
Yes,
Okay.
last year.
Or last year, yes,
Mhm.
sorry.
Yes.
Which was the year. Okay.
Thank you, Dottie. So now let's go to talk about the overall compensation package and compensation options, and then we'll end with strategy to ensure that we have a sustainable budget looking forward. We want to make decisions today that also have the long-term view. And in our under our compensation for our staff, our strength, what I want to remind you again is how I began. Our objective is to provide our employees with a compensation plan that not only meets the regional market, but also demonstrates how much we value them, but it also remains sustainable within a 5-year budget plan. Now, it is a good story, I think. You'll see it, you'll make your determination yourself. And I want to make sure that you're clear on how we're going to do this and why we can do this. So the how, we are introducing measures that includes a general increase in compensation that sets the pace regionally. If you'll see it, it either puts us way on the top or very close to the top. And also it begins addressing the compression piece that we have talked a lot, both for teacher and classify and employee. That's how we're doing. We're also going to present today in introducing or enhancing our current stipend for hard to staff position, like math, science, speech, and language. And we're going to end up with a conversation. We don't have the numbers, so it's not in consider in the numbers we're going to give, is identifying some school that we're going to call hard to serve. And those schools, then we anticipate that we could potentially come back to you guys and recommend a stipend for any staff member who works in those schools, and you'll see it later. That's the how. Now, if you go on the next slide, this is the piece that is the good story. I will tell you what the administration is comfortable in terms of the entire compensation package. We are proposing options to you that will bring a $20 million in total compensation moving forward. This represents the largest dollar amount salary increase in more than 20 years. So that is significant. It's a great story. And this is on top of last year, we did 14.9. So we're saying 20 million. And you know the dire financial situation that we are. For us to be able to do this, it's because the last year we've been working so strategically, understanding our budget, making some difficult decisions that allow us to show, as it was said in last week, our love for our staff and base it on compensation. So that's the total amount. Now let me walk you to the why we're able to do this. So the why is we have had to make some tough budget cuts made by the administration. And Dottie spoke to some of those already. Last year, we cut $16 million. So that's a recurring cut that we have done of $16 million at central office, not the campuses. This year, we're going to implement another cut of $6.5 million in central office. We also, because of the campus staffing guidelines, which gives us a saving of 1.2, that's an additional saving that we have done. If you recall, last year, we reduced the calendar days for some principal and assistant principals. In the past, you guys had approved increasing them. We reduced them, which will be $1.4 million that also we have saving. I just want to, and please chime in, Dottie or Chris or Tony, but I just want to make sure that even with this reduction, most of our principal would be higher than they used to be in terms of their number of days. So all that has allowed us to be able to say there still be some reduction in services, but that we feel very confident with a $20 million in total compensation package only in general funds. Because there's all the grants will take the same, but we're only talking about general fund. I also want to be very, very clear that we're able to have this conversation because we do have an agreement with the San Antonio Alliance, and I've been very public that any additional revenue, we don't know, this assumes that we don't get anything from the state. But if we get something from the state, we are not going to layer whatever compensation increase, except that we will match those who are below the state. Because if not, we cannot do it because this is creating a hole. And Alejandra and I have talked several times, and she's nodding her head in terms of agreement, because this allows us to make a decision in April of compensation increase. And I have to want to tell you that my colleagues in the region are not doing this. They're waiting for the legislative session. For us, there are very few districts that are in the fiscal year that begins in July. I think there are 3 of us. This has huge impact, but I've heard it in every faculty meeting from our teachers. They're making decisions now about next year. So this is why it's important, and I commend the Alliance for being our partners in doing this. So in the next slide, I give you this example of what I was just telling you. So in blue, let's say the district compensation plan calls for a $2,000 teacher pay raise. That's not the one. I'm just giving this as an example. But the legislator mandates a $2,500 teacher pay raise. We will not do 2,000 plus 2,500, resulting in 4,500. We will bring everybody to the 2,500. Okay? If we have somebody, because in our proposed, we could have, there's some generous increases that are going to exceed whatever the state, the legislator does. So those will stay. They won't get anything because they're going to be above and the requirement from the state. That makes sense? Makes sense. Okay. Okay. Now, on the next slide, this is just a summary. We're going to give you different options. This is based on an option that the administration is recommending. You will see that what we're talking about here is an increase of about $11 million for our teacher pay, classified, paraprofessional, and all transportation, those roads, the non-exempt, almost a $4 million increase. Then everybody else, a general pay increase of 3%. In addition to that, and we're going to talk about the compensation initiative, like increasing our stipend for bilingual ESL, for special ed, for high specialized need, hard to staff area, for speech pathologists, elevating their grade for our instructional special education assistants so that they get a higher pay based on the grade need, for math and science and longevity. All that comes to about $20 million. I went fast because each of these we have a slide. This is just to give you the high level. On the next slide, these are the compensation options that were presented to you last week. We gave you 7 options, if you remember. So obviously, unless the board wants to do more than 20 million, there's 2 options there, option 2 and option 3, that exceed what we feel confident without being very disruptive to the system. Those 2 exceed the 20 million. If the board wants to do higher than what we're proposing, we have a slide. If you want one of these 2 options, we have a slide to say, then give us direction on where we cut. That makes sense? Okay. So this is just a summary. Let me pause there before I ask Dottie to go over new options and the options that we are recommending, the total package of 20 million. Any questions before I move to that? I think Trustee Garza.
I can't read what's underneath in gray. The under the teacher. Pay.
Under the teacher said pay scale.
Gray. Yeah, because is that the same pay scale that's up
yeah, and
there?
we are going to
option 5. I think was the
and
pay scale.
no, it's not. It's a new option. Oh, okay. It's a new option, and don't worry, we have an entire slide on that. But I'll read it. Pay scale adjusts to 4% through year 5, then a 1/4% increase each year up to 9% when you are at 25. trying to address the compression. You will see the detail later, because that's one of the options that we're recommended. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Trustee Sorensen?
And maybe it's, sorry. Maybe it's addressed in further slides as I'm looking for, but I noticed there's a difference between, in this initial one, a 4% on the teacher and then a 3% on the classified. Are we thinking about putting those at the same percentages, or have we thought about? I just,
Well,
Yeah.
we have a different thing to talk about with the.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm
we have
guessing,
different- yes,
okay, like,
yeah.
yeah,
This is
then I
just-
don't, okay.
This is a summary based
Okay.
on one of the options that is recommended. But there are other options that also fall under the 20 million that
Okay.
you can consider.
Okay.
Okay,
So this is new option A1.
Yes.
that's the one we're going to move now, and that's the one that Dottie is going to start explaining. These are brand new options that were not presented. So those are above the 7 options that were presented last time. I'm just, the administration is actually, of those 7 options, asking the board not to consider option 2 or option 3. Option 3 brings it as an additional 13 million. If you want there, you're going to see what the implication. I'm also asking not to consider the others, because this does not address compression. And the other ones, we have a total of 20 million. So it's actually higher than all the remaining 5, if that makes any sense. Okay, yeah.
So the 20 million figure, the $20 million figure is the balanced budget figure, right?
In 5 years, in 5 years, we have a plan, and you'll see it later. Yes,
Now this is for.
correct. But it's something that we feel confident without being very disruptive to the system. Anything higher than 20 million, we feel is going to be disruptive to the system. Okay. So Dottie, you want to go with the new scenario, explain A1 to the board.
Okay, yes, thank you. So we have, we're going to be showing you 4 different compensation options that bundles different things together. And in this, let me say that all 4 scenarios are going to have a 3% general pay increase as a base. So all employees that may not be covered by another feature are going to get a minimum of 3% pay increase. But option 1 has the same, does have the teacher pay scale adjustment that superintendent just described. So the teacher pay scale adjustment starts at 4% through year 5, and then increases 0.25% every single year up to a maximum of 9% increase. So it's a substantial change to the teacher pay scale. It really lifts the higher years of tenure. It increases the gap in pay between the higher 20+ years and the entry for the pay scale. And we noticed that we are not as competitive at the higher years of pay for our teachers. And so this is an intentional restructuring to address that. And then there is there's going to be 2 different pay changes for teachers. And there are also 2 different pay strategies for the non-exempt staff, such as classified paraprofessionals, transportation, police. The first one that we're going to talk about is changing our $16 minimum entry pay rate to $17, and then still improving the compression that we have experienced, especially at the very entry scales, where because of the consecutive changes that we made to the minimum entry for the last 7 or 8 years, those scales got very compressed. And this is an attempt to lift the tenure years for this group. And this group is almost 2,800 employees or so.
Yeah.
I think I have that on another slide. So it's a significant change for that group as well. Primarily, it's primarily the entry 5 or 6 scales,
Yeah.
the lowest entry scales. So the cost for this, and so when we're talking about the these costs on these 4 scenarios, we're going to look at, that is what equals the top three boxes on
Yeah.
the summary slide that we went 2 slides back. So these are the, it's grouped into 3 categories: teachers, all of the classified and paraprofessionals, and police and transportation into one group, and then the GPI for everyone that is not a part of those 2 groups.
So let me summarize this one. This one is an option that is not the one that we're recommending, but it's an option that we can afford. It falls under the 20 million. If you're thinking, but this is total is 17.7 million. The difference is for all the other stipends and increase that we are also supporting comes up with the 20 million. So this one, to summarize, is every single teacher will see a minimum increase of 4%, with a maximum some will get 9% increase depending on their longevity. And this addresses the compression. Then for the minimum entry for non-exempt was to increase the starting salary to 17. Will also address the compression to 11 cents per year in terms of that. And that's really important to note. Any questions on this before we give you scenario A2?
Okay, and I apologize if this is in the next scenario, but I would just, so I'm just wondering, I know in the past you've talked about when we raise the minimum entry salary, that it does affect compression later on. So how does, so if someone started, like, let's say they started this past year at 16, they get a 3% raise, and then, but it's still
Yeah,
like not that much
great.
higher than 17. So yeah, I'm just.
So great point, great point. Obviously, in each of the model that we're presenting to you, we're trying to address 2 things: the compensation increase and the compression. So yes, even though we're increasing the salary, the entry salary, right? We are also addressing the compression by adding 11 cents per year that you have a servant. Your point is, that's why led us to recommend the next one, where we maintain the minimum entry, but the compression will be 20 cents as opposed to 11 every year. So you have much more of a gap. The slope, and you'll see the graph, the slope I feel is better on the second model. That's, I think that answered your question, right? I think.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Yeah, I was just trying to see, like,
Yes.
like, if you're making 16, do you get raised up to 70? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you reference the balance of 3 million or 2 point something million for stipends, what does stipends include? Is that all
No.
employee stipends in the district, or if you can define
Yeah.
which stipend?
Yeah, it's the first slide, and we're gonna come back to it in a one slide that you can read it better, Trustee Garza, because that one was small. But we define on the summary, so that include an increase, for example, on our bilingual and ESL by $1,000 more in their stipend. We are increasing the special ed classroom stipend by 1,000.
So I guess my question is, what are all the stipend positions not included in any kind of increase in the district?
There's
Athletic stipend, spend, I don't know.
Yeah.
you know,
Oh.
classroom sponsor, like a yearbook.
This only
academic chair.
includes for position that we consider hard to staff. So that's why we added new ones, like including for our instructional assistants, which you'll see who work in special ed. We increase for them. We elevate, we are doing the speech pathologist, the high specialized needs, which are called the program, you'll see it later, the program specialist for dyslexia, program specialist for special
So
ed.
I guess my question is, for all full and part-time positions, which positions are we not, they're not going to be impacted or see an increase in the budget in any one of these scenarios, whether it's a part-time position, whether it's a stipend amount within our budget or our expenses on the human resource side. The day after we approve it, we're going to get a call. We weren't included. That's happened there every year. And so I just want to know from the front end,
Yeah.
which positions in our district will not see a penny more if we adopt this in the role that they play, whatever the role, whether it's a part-time, full-time stipend.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
we did not put the part-time rate forward. Last year it got adjusted in a large way from $9.25 to $12, and then certain positions are at 16. So that is not addressed right now. So that would be one example. And
Just so that
then,
we have full
yes,
transparency, and
and
disclosure that these are the.
you know, as you
positions.
mentioned, there's lots and lots of stipends that are not included, many stipends. These are
These are stipends.
small.
But can you, to trustee Garza's question, Dottie, is it only the part-time that would not, which we adjusted, but any other employee is going to see an
Oh,
increase?
any
all-
permanent full-time employee.
Will see an increase. Everybody, whether they get a stipend, some of those who are going to get a stipend is going to get more, but everybody will get at least 3% or 4% or even higher.
Yeah, so I just wanted to see a list of those, I guess, part-time not getting anything, or those that are getting an increase that have a stipend, they're not seeing an increase on the stipend,
Yeah,
just so we know.
yeah, and we
I
can
mean,
give you
we'll,
that.
we'll
list.
make sure that
Yeah.
we, to make sure there's
Yeah,
nothing else, but I
perfect.
can't think of anything
And
else.
yes, so
Teacher comes in first, this is the first year coming in. Do they get that? That they will get that also? This stipend, if they're a first year teacher coming in?
only if they are in one of these hard to fill. If they're in math, if they're in math, science, special ed, bilingual, yes, they will get the stipend.
Okay.
If they fall under one of
Under
these
those
categories. Yes.
categories, okay.
Just for clarification, Mr. Garza, so you're talking about someone who does like chess club after school. They've been doing it and getting, say, $500 a year for 10 years. That's the type of
Yes.
category you're
Yeah.
talking about.
And we didn't include them, what we use a criteria, which was really positions that are hard to staff, like science, math, special ed, bilingual, ESL, speech pathologist, program specialist for dyslexia. All those are IAs or instructional assistant for special ed. Anyone that we have historical data to show, and you'll see it later, that shows that we have problem in terms of filling those positions.
So that brings me to my question, ensuring that we are aligning our budget to our goals, right? Because right now we're bringing everybody, I guess, up across the board, but we've also made a commitment to ensure that there are allocated funding to ensure that we meet every last goal.
Yes.
So what you just said, as far as these positions, that's why there's an intentional focus on those.
Exactly. Great point. And you will, even though the 20 million that I gave you does not include that we are exploring, you'll see it later in the presentation, we are exploring the hard to serve schools. That is not included. We will bring it, we're committed to doing that, but we have to finalize and have the metric that is very solid. I think you'll see our beginning thinking, and then you can give us feedback, or you might want to use also this additional metric.
Because I will be that person that always
Yes.
goes, how does it go back to our goals?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so now Dottie's going to do A2.
Okay, thank you. So A2 has the identical teacher pay scale adjustment. It's a match. The change on this scenario is the compression adjustments for the non-exempt groups that we discussed. So this is the one that does not increase the minimum entry to 17. It stays at 16, but the compression or the incremental pay between years of service for pay is increased to 20 cents. And that is basically eligible up until the maximum of the pay scale, the way it's currently structured. So this scenario basically includes that version of the non-exempt adjustment with the same teacher pay scale that we just saw previously.
For the previous scenario into this one. So the main difference with this one is what I said. This one We remain, the entry pay is at $16, but every single year to address the compression is 20 cents as opposed to 11 cents in the previous one. The previous one does increase the entry by 17, and you'll see how competitive we are with the market and thing. And but the increase is 11. If you notice, this is the one that we are recommending, but as long as it's the 20, we can do other combinations of that. The difference in, it's not that we're taking money away. The difference between this one and the first one, which increased the entry, is just about $200,000 difference. The value that you're sending the message is the longer you are with us, the more we value you, and we're showing it with the compensation. That's the big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's exactly where my question is coming in. So I assume that we've done I mean, of course, you've already done the analysis
Yeah.
for where the bulk of our teachers and our staff are on their longevity
Yes.
curve here in the compensation window. So I guess I'd be kind of interested in sort of seeing the impact scale, like
Yes.
what percentage what percentage at what increment increase, right? Because if like there's only 2 people that are eligible for the 9%, right? You know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? So I want to kind of see the impact of this on our staff. So when we roll
Yeah.
this out, I mean, that's going to be the number of people who have a
and we have
paycheck
that.
that's got a differential. Yeah.
And we have that.
Yeah.
It's a good point, and we even have the average of what everybody's going to get. We're going to show you in a minute, but that leads us to actually your question leads us to our next slide.
Okay.
Look at the slide with, I think it's the graph that you have there, which is our teacher pay. This is on model A, right? The model A for teacher pay. This is with our surrounding district. The solid red line is SAISD current teacher pay, where they are as they move through their longevity with us. The dotted red line is what we propose with the first one, the scale. And if you can see where we fall, look at the significant increase that we are going in the red dotted line. The more time you at with us, the larger they increase. And also look at where it put us with our surrounding district, except one caveat. This does not assume, we don't know what the other surrounding districts are going to do compensation increase for next year. We don't know. So we're just basing it on that. But look at the significant gap between this and this that we're doing. Does that make sense? That graph?
We're still behind.
We're always behind. Southwest is always the highest paying.
Yeah.
Small district, but they're remote.
However, look at where it put us from here to
Yeah.
here, from here to here.
And the
I
gap.
know, Trustee Garza. And I hope that you see that my administration is trying really hard to acknowledge our teachers. I wish we didn't have a financial constraint, but yeah. But we're really trying really hard in a very difficult financial situation for us. So that's teacher pay. If you look at the next slide, then we gave it to you, the table. Where we currently are compared to other, this is just current, not with any increase. So you can see that in most cases, we are competitive to other districts. There's some that do it, but this will address that too as well. But it's also, it will address the fact that I am getting killed by teachers saying, I have 20 years with you guys and I only make $6,000 more. They will see a significant increase beyond the 4%, trying to address that. And it is also, I want to say, no matter how many we have on those, it is an incredible saving if we keep them, because just the recruitment, the training that causes this save us a lot of money. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to go on the same scenario, give you more detail on our non-exempt study.
So this is the one of two different options for the classified paraprofessional transportation roles. And it's the one with the increase in the minimum entry rate to $17 and the 11-cent difference in experience for pay. A few things about this. I think the chart tells a story on the right side, because basically that is all of our different scales, starting with N01 is our entry scale for our entry level employees like custodians. Actually, I'm not sure all the roles that are in N1, but this is a very big impact for them. The orange portion of the bar shows the dollars that are going to come from the compression adjustment, and the blue part of the bar is basically their 3% GPI. So the GPI portion gets applied first, and then they receive possibly an adjustment to basically take them to the 11-cent compression adjustment. So you can see that the dollars that are being put towards this initiative are heavily impacting the very entry part of the pay scale. And that's what the size of the bar is not very important, because there's a lot of employees in the first early pay scales, and it kind of just dwindles down. Some of them are very specialized in the higher grades. So that's more a reflection of how many people run the role. But the percentage difference between the orange and the blue is showing how much additional pay that those groups are receiving over the 3%.
You want to show them the second option
Okay.
on this one?
This is the option that is the no change to the minimum entry. It'll stay at $16, but the compression adjustment, the spacing between the years for tenure is 20 cents. So it's a higher slope. There's a larger gap between entry pay for a role and pay at 20 or 25 years. And we have a large number of people with a lot of tenure in some of these roles that have been very loyal and will really, I think, appreciate this. And so again,
This one is a 15-cent increase of what we're currently doing for every year, which is
yes. So the chart again kind of summarizes which of the pay scales that this is impacting the greatest. Okay. And then this is a really good slide. I think this is the competitive pay for these same types of roles that shows if you can follow the green line, you could see that we have been leaders in the minimum entry pay for many years since the board started the initiative. And so it's still true for most all roles on this page.
questions before we move to the next piece?
Yes, ma'am.
Trying to get a little bit of a handle on the compression for this, trying to get a handle on what it looks like again for the compression and the entry level, and how that's something I'd like to see visualized somewhere.
Okay.
Well,
Do you want to add anything,
Yeah,
Melissa or
and
Jill?
we had a slide that you had supporting data that talks about what the average.
Yes, I do.
The average
Yes.
for teachers would be, the average
I
for
do have
classifieds
that
in
if
terms
you-
of the total average of the increase that they would
Yeah,
see.
I do have that.
But
in
Melissa,
comparison to what they make right now.
correct.
Well,
correct.
I think what I have is
Oh,
a
yes, right here.
comparison to the 3%. So for instance, for this group, we have two options, but knowing that they are already going to get the 3% across the board and it's applied first, correct?
Mhm.
So after the 3% is applied and then all the compression adjustments are done for those that actually need them. Now, not everybody in this group is going to get this raise.
Yeah.
There will be many that get the 3%. And that's basically showing just the blue bar on the chart that we just showed back here. So it's not covering everyone, it's covering the ones that have really been compressed, and that's primarily the entry roles. But just for example, the option one with the $17 entry, the average raise for this whole group is 5.6. So that
Four.
means some will get 3, some will get 5.6, some will get 8 or 9%
Exactly.
because they are, more impacted.
Yeah. Do you have, and Melissa, do you have anything?
Yes, thank you. So we are addressing compression across the board through all of the non-exempt employees in all grades. This was only representative of the grades that would be impacted if we increased the minimum rate to $17.
I guess this kind of goes back to what Sarah said. Sarah, I think it was you that was saying about, you started, if you're still 16 from this year and you go up to even 16 and 20 cents, 25 cents, you're still behind the person who just came in.
No.
So-
We first are.
No, we
So that's the piece.
So
it's not-
great point. We first start giving everybody on this group a 3% increase. Everybody gets a 3%
Okay.
increase. Above that, some will get the compression. So if you're just entering, you're not getting the compression. So the people who have been with us
Yeah.
will get, that's why the average will be about 5.64% that we will see in this staff. Some would only get 3, others might get 8%,
Okay.
but the average is 5. Does
Okay.
that?
All right. So that is first and then the
Yeah.
other, I mean,
Yeah. And
that-
what-
that's above and beyond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What we
Okay,
can
thank you.
do,
Okay.
what we can do, because I thought it was a lot of information, we can give you what on each, we have that. What will be the difference?
Okay.
For like, if you hear 1 year, 2 years, we can give you that. But on average, we're talking almost 6%, 5.64
Okay.
on the first option.
That's the option on that.
That
Yes.
sounds a lot better.
I had what if a teacher transfers from another district to our district? Do they start off? How do they?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I'll
They
look at
come
it.
in.
Human capital. I don't know how.
They come in.
Thank you. If we have a teacher who is joining us from Northeast and comes over at 20 years, they will be paid at the 20-year step based on the new schedule.
Mhm.
So 20, depending on the option that we agree upon, it would be based on that.
So
rate.
we honor their experience.
We honor their experience as long as it's reflective in their service record.
Okay. Trustee Sorensen?
Okay, so I'm just trying to, okay, so 3% of 16 is 48, right, or 0.48? So,
Correct.
okay, so I'm sure, so are they, so a 3% raise would be $16.48 an hour.
Yes.
And then the entry rate would be 17, but then we're gonna bring everybody up. I'm sorry, I keep getting confused. I think they're on that.
Yeah.
So
So
if I-
that's a
Can we
great bet.
talk about that one? That's complicated.
So the example in that case, someone who is at 1615 and gets a 3% increase, they would get that 3% increase. And then we're going to look at how many years of
Yes.
experience that they have, apply the increment on whichever one we decide, whether it's 11 cents or
Or
20
20.
cents for every year that they have.
Exactly.
And as long as that doesn't go over maximum, then that will address the compression.
So-
So that will take them over
Yeah.
what the $17 is.
So
if we
Melissa, let me
choose a
give
17.
a concrete example, and I'm doing my math in my head. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm going to use your example of 16. Let's say somebody is 16 and that's their first year.
Right.
16. So we do the 3%, which is about 48 cents. That's the increase that they will get. But now you have somebody else who has been at let's say 3 years, and might have been at 17. So they're going to get their 3% increase, and depending on which option, plus 11 cents for each year or 20 cents above whatever that 3%.
That's
I
correct.
think
They're, they're already served.
And I understand that piece. I guess and maybe, I mean, it's a small number of people, but it's the people who might be earning 16 now with just like 1 year of experience, who would still be earning less than 17.
Yes.
Because
do that
if
one?
we did 11 or
If
20
they're
on
at
top
1
of
year
that,
today,
yeah.
and then next year they will be going to 2 years because we'll roll their year. And so
Okay.
they will be being paid for 2
years
years at 11
experience.
cents each, in addition to the 3%. So
Okay.
it will take them over the 17
Yeah.
if we go with the 17.
Yeah.
And it's,
Okay.
can you?
And the only thing I think between the both differences is what we have limited amount of finite number of money to play with, right?
Right.
So it's what do you want? Do you want to increase the minimum entry and then do a lower, which is the 11 cents as opposed to 20 cents? I tend to lean, we want to honor your loyalty, your stay with us, and you continue to stay by making that compression bigger. That's the only. piece.
And if I
Which,
could just add, if we do increase the minimum rate to 17, then no one would earn less than 17.
Correct. Yes.
That is helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so. what's the
We
next?
were going to start B1.
Yeah, B1.
Okay.
So B1, it's not what we're recommending because this does address the compression and gives the increase, but the compression is done by band. So as opposed to the other one, every year you are more. So for example, here, 4% between 1 to 4. If you're 5 to 9, you're going to get 5%. It doesn't matter if you're 9 or 5, you're going to get 5%. Unlike the other one, every year you get something more. Also, think about these bands. If you do these bands, and I was just at 9, at 9, I could have gone at 6 because a 10 is at 6, just that, and not get anyone compared to those who were 8 and 7 and 6. Does that make sense? Okay. It makes sense in my head because I've been studying, but let me try to explain it and chime in. So obviously, we are treating the increase for individual by band. So whether you're here 1 year or 4 year, your increase is going to be the same. So for those that we're not really addressing the compression there because we're treating them the same, right? Get that part? The part that I say is like, imagine that if I am at 4, at 4 years, I'm 4%. I was just short 1 year to make it to a 5%, but those who are 1 year are getting the same increase that I did. That's the difference.
And can I just clarify that, even though the bands are, grouped together, it is applied to a different base. So they're not getting the same
Yeah,
dollars.
not the
They're
same
getting
dollar.
higher dollars, but they're getting the same
Same
percentage
percentage.
increase. So it's,
Yes.
so there will still be space in between every year of tenure, but there, you want to take that, Melissa? Expand upon, we need a microphone. It was proposed from our,
So yes, the reason why this model was proposed was because we have in past years, we've heard that it's hard for us to attract new teachers into the district. And then also as they build into their career, it's hard to keep them because we're competing with the other districts. So that's why we're doing different percentages at the lower level, and then we increase them for every 5-year increments. And then as you get higher is when we start applying the higher rate of increase. So that's what we were trying to do is, one, we're trying to attract the new teachers, then we're trying to retain them and then keep them, and so that they build their career and want to stay and make SAISD their home.
Yeah, and obviously, we're recommending A2, If you wanted to go this, we can afford this because the difference is not significant. It's just those issues that I talked about, the compression is not the same and you're not, and the other one, we're truly recognizing every single year you're with us, you get an increase.
Right. And so if you look at our current teacher pay model from 0 years to 30 years, there's only a $7,000 difference. And so what this is doing is building in that, I guess, incentive to stay within these buckets.
Yeah. And then the scenario B2 is the same at A2. The teacher bands remain the same, but this will not have the $17 and this one will be 20 as opposed to 11 cents.
So pretty much the same as the first one.
Yes.
As far as
Yeah.
Except for the bands
the bands, right?
are the only difference. And we gave you that other graph that will talk about what the slope is. And if you compare it to the first one, the A2, the gap of the compression is wider in A2 than it is in this B model for their teachers. So we're gonna pause now and take all your questions before this concludes the piece on the compensation before we continue with the stipends.
So in the A2, you would be creating a more obvious difference between the person who's been working 90 years and the person who's been working 20.
Exactly,
All right.
exactly. There will be a significant difference.
Okay, all right. Because if they're all going up, they're gonna, it doesn't seem like there's gonna be much difference in the argument. Look how long I've been working and that it's still not much different from,
Yeah,
you know.
great point. Does this completely solve our complete compression? No. It's what we can afford. So yes, so everybody will see at least a minimum of 4. Some will see maybe a 5, a 6, a 7, or 8. Still, the gap, we're closing. We're making the gap wider. But I personally think the gap should be wider, but we can't afford it this year. We cannot solve more. We're trying our best with our resources that we have right now.
So can we, and I don't know if maybe that's what Dottie was saying, that she can give us, or maybe it's here, an actual example, employee that's at 2 years
Yes.
gets $50,000
Yes.
and on this scenario, they'll be here opposed to
Yes.
somebody who's here 20 years
Yeah.
at the
Yes.
same level will get
Yeah,
what?
so
Okay.
what we're going to do is provide you several examples for teachers and several examples for different class, non-exempt. Not all of them because we have tons of titles. So we can do an IA, we can do a custodian, we can do a bus driver, some of those to give you the sense. And we can actually show you what the progression will be with their journey with us. For like, let's say 20 years, 25 years, we can do that.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, perfect.
We're saying how much work the staff has done.
Oh, yes. But I have to tell you, and as I said earlier, the reason we can have this conversation, we have been working the last 10 months to make our budget very transparent and getting all the information that I think puts me in a better position than I was last year, because it was my first budget cycle, to tell you what we can do and how we're going to address that. Because in any of these, the $20 million, I have to be clear with you. There's going to be reduction in services because we're cutting a central office. There will be an impact on facilities, but it's the right thing to, are they major? No, but it is, we wanted to value our teachers. There is going to be a reduction in services. It's not that we're doing this, but not cutting. We're cutting in order to do this. So any questions, or if you don't have any questions, what would be helpful for us is which option are you leaning to? Because then we can work more with giving you the information based on that option. Or, yeah.
Look, what you still haven't showed us, I don't think, is if we cut certain things, how much more could we get to.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. So if you want to,
I-
now you almost gave me a heart
I
attack.
just want to know, if does, what generates another 5 million, or 1 million,
I
5
mean,
million, 10?
there's many options, and I think we have the list.
We do.
We do have the list. Do we have it on the slide?
I have it in the deck.
Show it on the slide on the deck.
Okay, we wanted to be number one, how far are we? And then what would it take to
Well-
get that? And again, it's just so we know as a board.
Yes.
In the community, we can go back and talk to the community and say, if we wanted to be the highest paid school district in Bear County, or I don't know if that's South Texas or whatever.
Yeah.
We would have to do X, Y, and Z and see how the community reacts to that.
Absolutely, except that even if we do that and we say, because I am asking the board to make a decision in April. If you're gonna make it, we will not know what the other districts, their compensation would be. But yes, if we wanted to do more, as right now, as you said, be the leader as a currently, we would have to make more cuts because it's going to cost us more than 20 million. We gave you a slide. I mean, there are many options. I mean, we don't need to offer, I know I'm going to say this, you're going to kill me, but this is not the direction. But we don't have to offer full day pre-K because the state does not pay for full day pre-K. Those are options that we need. I mean, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that there are decisions that we can make trade-off, but it will cost us. So what would be helpful for us, because as Mr. Valdez said, the staff has worked really, really hard. If you want to do something higher than the 20 million, let us know what number is comfortable, so then we can come, this is the actual cuts.
Well, I got a couple of questions. The night after we approved, or we were provided the cuts for the campus positions, more than one person asked, why aren't we closing schools like the other school districts? So there's already the narrative out there. And so I said, well, we haven't looked at it, but we've talked about it in terms of, we know that we have an abundance of space that we're oversized at all of our campuses, but I can't tell you if we closed one school, what savings would we generate?
Yeah.
Is it 1 million? Is one campus 5 million?
Yeah.
Is it 10 million?
Yeah.
Because that's per year.
Yeah.
And then you're able to say that we could
Yeah.
put towards the classroom.
Yeah.
Of where we have students.
Yeah.
And we can put it into instruction. But we've never had the depth of conversation to know, what does one school equal? What does
Yeah.
5 school equal? In addition to these, because again, everything I look up here goes back into the classroom of where we have students.
Yeah, yes.
So
Yes,
that doesn't help.
I know.
But the area that I think is the most obvious, but yet most politically charged, is empty classrooms.
Yes.
Empty buildings.
Yes.
Don't make sense. And so,
Cool.
and again, I want to take that out and have a
Yes.
conversation, but I can't tell them what we will save that we could put back into more instruction if we do close 1 or 2 or 5.
Yeah, great point. First, I'm going to address a couple of those. On this slide, you're absolutely right, Trustee Garza. This will impact our schools and our classroom. The reason for that is the bulk of our budget is allocated at the school and for instruction. So it will have, that's why we said with the 20 million, we feel comfortable that we're not touching that significantly. The reason we are not having the conversation on school consolidation and what this would mean is because I will tell you, as your superintendent, you have one guardrail for me: embrace your community. And that's that the superintendent will not make any major decision without authentic community engagement. This is going to take us a significant, there's no way we can do this for next year. We are beginning this process. And it's going to take us 6 or 7 months with a huge committee to give us the criteria. And then we begin selling it to the community for the following year of 24-25, which would allow us then to rethink again, our compensation increase based on that. That's the only reason. It's not something that I have to tell you that I personally, as a new superintendent, have the capacity to manage within this year and do it right. Do it very, very thoughtfully. I am here for the long haul. I love this job. But when you talk about school consolidation, superintendents easily lose their jobs if it's not done well. We need to have a really solid plan that we're going to give a white glove treatment to our staff who are going to be impacted, our families and our students. There's no way we can pull that off for next school year.
That's a fair statement. However, I do want to be equipped with the data so that when we are asked in the community, well, why didn't you give more? Let's say, after June, another district does 10%.
Yeah.
They start asking those questions. They'll say, well, this is what it's going to
Yes.
cost. This is what it's going to take for our district to get to a level that our students, our teachers, our communities are worth.
Yeah.
And give them the answers rather than you say, I don't know.
Yeah. So what we can do, let me see if this would help you. I don't want to go into the process of like, how much are we going to save? Because it depends on many factors, because we also want, like, for example, if we do school consolidation and we want to keep our average class size at the elementary is 17. And at the secondary in the core area is 14. That doesn't mean that every classroom has that, but that's the average. Let's say we do school consolidation and we say at the elementary, let's keep the 17 average class size. That means we keep all our teachers. Or say we increase the class size to 20, but we're not going to cut the teachers. And because of that, now we can have behavior teachers or intervention teachers because we have this surplus. What we can offer you, because we have this ready, is what is the additional cost that every school is costing us. So for example, the entire cost. So for example, one of our high school is costing us per student $18,000, $18,000 per student, when we only get 9,000. So those are the things that we can provide you with, like, because then you can say, yes, if the community wants to continue having small school, then we can continue having this generous compensation increase or making changes because our resource, but we have that list and we can provide if that will be helpful. Okay.
So,
Yeah,
did you have something to say, Dottie? Okay. So you had asked like what scenarios we can live with. I mean, I want to say, yeah, I appreciate all of the work that went into this. I appreciate like the attempt to address compression, which is fantastic. Am I ready to say where I am? I'm not sure,
No,
but
that's fine.
I mean, I think you've made clear that A2 is the preference, and and I can understand that. I think for me, the one thing, and because folks have brought it up at our last board meeting, was what happens if we raise teacher pay and then the support professionals and the classified workers only get a 3% raise. And I'm wondering, at least for those folks who are like on our campuses and doing facility work and actually really don't even make that much money, if we could give them a 4% too, and how that would add into all of that.
That's
If we
fair.
could-
That's
okay.
fair. So let me paraphrase what I heard you. Heard you. And remember, we're not making decisions today, right? But this is helpful. What you're saying is, in addition to the compression,
Yes.
could you think about increasing the percentage for non-exempt from a 3 to a 4 for everybody and build the compression? That would be helpful. But what also will be helpful if you give me this guidance too. Remember, right now I told you we feel very comfortable with a $20 million, including the other stipend. If we say to you, Jaime, do some additional cuts and go to 22 million, what would that look like? Or, because if we stick in the 20, I have to adjust everything. Does that make sense? Because if I am increasing one, I have to reduce it on some end.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and understanding that that number would go up, and I guess, yeah, figuring out.
Yeah.
what that-
So is your point? Is your point more equity on the percentage, for like 3.5 to 3.5, right? 4 and 4, or is it, is that what you're thinking? Like, because it's one group is at one elevated percentage baseline bracket and the other. So if it's 3.5 and 3.5 or 3.8 and 3.8 to get parity.
Yeah, that there'd be parity. I mean, I'd
Okay.
prefer it be 4 too, because I
Yes.
kind of like that number as a good floor. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and whatever those
Yeah.
numbers look like, and then
Okay,
having
perfect.
future conversations, understand there
No.
may have to be
Yeah,
cuts.
I understand what trustee Soren said. It's a really good point. It is. Why don't we do parity, at least in that percentage, which is 4, because the non-exempt are most of our lowest paid staff. So totally understand. It's a fair point. We can bring you that information, but you're not asking me to go, oh, do a 5 or do that several options for that. At least at 4.
Just the parity
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think I like also the A2 with the compression, because at least with a 20 cents per year increase, because I think it's human nature that if you were to get a pay increase every year, I mean, that's what you look forward to, get a pay increase here instead of waiting 2 to 3 years, what have you.
Yeah.
So I think A2 would be okay.
Okay. And
Also, do we have where it's categorized as far as our staff? Because I know as far as teachers, we can see how many have so many years of service. I remember y'all showed us that at one time.
Yeah.
But can we do that for staff too? Because that way we kind of know if we have more people who won't be seeing bigger increase or where the average is gonna lie.
yeah,
Okay,
we can do that.
Okay.
And we have that data.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair point too. Okay, yes.
Yeah, I'm most comfortable at this point with the A2, but I do want to see
Yeah.
this write up that Sarah suggests.
That 4%. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
5.
Yeah, I fall in with the A2 recommendation as well. I am, of course, the parity question is one that is of interest to me, and I'm very happy to see that we have a systemic approach to compression. I have one other question, just generally. When on this compression journey that we have for our categorization, when will we be, as from a human capital management perspective, when will we have like a defensible disaggregation of pay scales, right? When do we fall in where we're good? Like in which year do we have where we're not like all bundled up?
Like, it's the question, when are we going to really totally resolve the compression issue?
Yes. It's not tough. Well, I'm just, when are we comfortable to say that it is not a challenge, that we have an approach that works to start to resolve that?
It's a great question. I'll let them answer, but it's also, I've met with Alejandra several times prior to this last week. And I had said to her, we are committed to continue addressing the compression issue. This is not something that we can solve in 1 year. I don't know, maybe you, the compensation queen, can give us a forecast.
So compression has occurred over many, many years in the district, and it's occurred for different reasons. Changing our minimum pay and not addressing the years within when we do that. And then also just changing job scopes, job responsibilities, and change or recategorization. So a lot of things have occurred over decades. And so it's going to be a long journey to address all of the compression. And considering our budget, we have to take this as a stepped approach in order to address it.
Yeah. And part of the Always Learning, we do have where we're going to do a compensation instruction review. So we will probably be able to answer that question. Chris?
Just to add to that, and you touched on that, is that part of our Always Learning initiative with HCM is to, within 5 years, get to that place that we have, not just in your words, defensible numbers, but that we have a systematic approach to address those concerns each and every year. It might look a little bit different every year, but that's our approach over the next 5 years.
And I want to go back to Trustee Sorensen's question. And you know me, I lead with transparency. So I'm going to tell you that when we began this process, as of Saturday, something changed on Saturday, but as of Saturday, we had parity. We had 3% and 3%. Okay, so for the class non-exempt and our teachers, the minimum plus the compression, we had the 3%. We got a sense that there is a likelihood, I don't know, that the legislator will do the 2,000. So that forced us to, let's make sure that every teacher at least will get 2,000. So we don't have to go back and readjust. But in doing that, we forgot about, but that's why originally they were 3 and 3. And the reason for that was I had a conversation on Saturday, Dottie and I had a conversation with, will remain nameless, a high-level senior TA official. And in terms of like, you know, are we going to be expected to layer this? And I want to be transparent because even still, we're getting mixed, but said no. If, I just want to be clear, if in April, when you make the adoption, if the legislature, I don't think this is going to happen based on our conversation with that senior TA official. But, but if it does happen that the legislators say, if you announce something, you have to layer that, I will come to the board and say, rescind that. Rescind that, and then in June, we will adopt new one, because if not, we will be in deep hole. Because we're talking about above the 20 million, whatever it is. I don't think that's why we are confident that we can do this because of that conversation. But because of that, we adjusted the 3% to a 4%, which gave us at least everybody 2,000 or more, which if that's the case, if it's 2,000, we're in a good position because everybody will get that and significantly more. Most of our staff will get more because of the compression. But we would do the 4% on parity. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so now we get sense of next steps for you on this. Not, oh yeah.
So on the other slide you had with the things that you were going to cut.
Oh,
You
wanna see
broke
that
my
again?
heart when you had LOTC up there
I
because the
know.
LOTC showed up in force on Saturday. So
I
Patty,
know.
please tell Colonel Cheatham how grateful we are to the students, but also to Beth Jones and the community engagement, family engagement team. It was a very great showing of support on Cesar Chavez. So I just wanted to take a moment
Yay.
there. But we haven't talked about the right sizing of stipends based on program size. And we've talked about it before sort of loosely, but I think this is the time to do that because there are some programs that at some point in time had 60, 70 kids and those
Yeah.
5, 6 stipends are still there. And those programs are not the same size anymore. And you have programs like JROTC, Mariachi, you have
Yeah.
other programs that are growing
Yeah.
and the stipends have not caught up with that. So I would like to see a right sizing of stipends based on, I mean, we should all be competing for students in our programs and receiving stipends based on the size of them. So I do think this is a good time to do that while we're here. So
You're saying for next school year?
Yeah.
Because it's something I also want to make sure that we socialize with that. But yes, absolutely. We can look into it. And the reason we didn't prepare this copy for you, we didn't give you this copy because we're not suggesting any of these cuts. We're just saying, if you want a significant more than the 20 million, this is what the only areas that we can have. Okay, so now we're going to go with other part of our compensation increases, which are our stipend enhancements. And I think we have talked about them. So what we are considering is for high high specialized need which are hard to staff. Do you want to describe those, Chris? Oh, we need a mic for you. Get a mic for Chris.
So I want to talk about just something, when you mentioned a moment ago about stipends, we recognize that every position is important when it comes to stipends. The extra, as a former coach, I recall the stipend that came along with coaching 3 sports. And, almost 30 years ago, not realizing, I thought that $2,000 for everything was a lot of money. But you realize certainly the work that goes into it. We understand that everyone is important, but we look at here to consider is these highly specialized needs are areas that not only have great specialized needs, but that also diagnose, that also give insight, that at times we've had to lean on contractors for particular services, which is of course necessary for students, but things we want to get away from. And what you're going to see in this is that also the work in these areas is certainly highly specialized as well. Again, every role is important, every role is different, but you see that in this respect, we believe that this does bring additional value to these roles, increasing these numbers for these very, again, oftentimes hard to find roles as we go through not just job fairs, but as we go through our conversations with employees as well. And Jill has some additional information to add to that.
So one of the things we tried to look at was areas where, like Chris said, where we've had to bring in contractors, that's that highly specialized need. But also if you look at those, for example, the speech language pathologists, in this particular scenario, the speech language pathologist would get 4,000, but all of our speech language pathologists also have their 3 Cs. So then they get an additional 3,000. And then if they are bilingual, then they get an additional 3,000. So in those areas where we are spending a significant amount of money for contracted services, we're giving those really specialized areas significant opportunities to increase their stipends. But for us, it's still a savings because our contracted services are significantly more expensive. So we wanted to really recognize those areas. Again, looking at bilingual, looking at our special ed classrooms that are, we struggle to keep special ed teachers in those self-contained classrooms, especially our behavior classrooms. And we've really struggled this year with getting teachers into our early childhood classrooms. Our ACE, what was ACE or ALE, those have not been as difficult to staff, still difficult, but not as difficult as our behavior units and our early childhood units.
Jill, so I'm going to give an example. Correct me if I'm wrong based on what you said. So if we have a bilingual teacher, so our proposal is a $4,000 stipend. If that teacher is bilingual and teaching math or science, then there will be an additional 3,000.
Yes.
For a total of 7,000.
Correct.
Okay, I think trustees, Osuna had a question? Okay.
Right, yeah, so it's really layering that to be able to, when we have run the numbers before, we have a number of teachers in our district who are bilingual certified and who are also special ed certified, who are choosing not to work in those areas.
Exactly.
And so we are also hoping to be able to entice them back into those roles because these are so difficult to staff.
Okay, and then if we go to the next slide is on instructional assistants that are part of our GEC or special ed. This is increasing. We recognize that some of our special ed units are more challenges in terms of the work and we want to encourage people to want to come and work with our most vulnerable students. And we wanted to do a differential pay, just like we're doing for the stipend for our teachers, except that we don't have concept of stipends for our non-exempt. So the way we're doing is changing the pay grade that would increase the pay grade. I don't know if it's Melissa or Jill who's going to talk about that.
So I actually had the opportunity to sit down with Kristen Williams and we really talked about these different positions and where those individuals should be placed. And so our current inclusion teachers, we would leave those at an N03. One of the things that we see are right now are
our ECSE, so our early childhood, and also our back units are at the same level as our inclusion teachers. So, or inclusion instructional assistants. So given a choice, if somebody is
Yeah.
offered a position to take a behavior unit versus an inclusion teacher, they're taking, or inclusion role, they're taking the inclusion
Inclusion
role
role.
because it's not as difficult. And so we did not change the level of the inclusion instructional assistant. Our ALE classrooms, which we used to refer to as ACE, those were already at an N06. And at the bottom of this page, you'll notice kind of what I put what the entry level pay is for these, just so you could see right now, based on our current pay structure, what the entry level pay is. So we did not change the ALE or ACE classrooms because they were already at that N06 level, but we are recommending to bring up the early childhood to that level, as well as the job coach. And in talking with Kristen Williams, what we talked about, especially with that job coach, is the job coach has increased supervision because they're actually out at the work site with those students. And so we opted, even though that's not necessarily a self-contained classroom, the level of supervision is higher. So the early childhood, the ALE and the job coach would all be at the N06 level. And then we wanted to create a differential there for the behavior classrooms, moving those to an N07. So for that behavior classroom, you would go from a minimum of $16.50 an hour to a minimum of $17.25 an hour. Right, so about a 75-cent increase just at the minimum level. And then in talking with Kristen, the mental health instructional assistant, bumping that up, that right now is also at an N03, and that's a very difficult position to staff because it does require additional training, and they're working with students who are sometimes in significant crisis. And so just like I said, in working with Kristen, these are the levels we're recommending to ensure that we are able to fully staff those classrooms. In talking with Kristen, also, one of the things that we talked about based on our current level of pay for our instructional assistants in the BSC classrooms and also the mental health, we are having a situation right now where folks, when they come into those roles, many of them are leaving within the first month.
Yeah.
And so we're really trying to find a way to keep folks into those roles.
And this translates like about an additional 2-point-something million. That's how it gets us to the 20. So it's part of the compensation. Before I go to the other piece, let me pause there to see if you have questions or clarification around the stipend or the pay change for instructional assistant as it relates to our special ed units.
One of the campus social workers that we have, do they come under a stipend?
Do they come under what?
Stipends? Social
No.
workers?
No.
No, they did not.
No. So right now, under the special, neither do our guidance counselor. We went with speech pathologist, program specialist for dyslexia, program specialist for special ed, language pathologist, speech,
Evaluator.
and evaluator or diagnostician. The reason we're doing those and not the other is because these are so specialized. The counseling and social work are specialized, but these 5 are almost impossible to fill. So that's the reason. And I know when I mentioned it to Alejandra Lopez, she said, it makes sense, Jaime, but are you committed to continue addressing? I said, absolutely. It's just given our limited resources, we really wanted to make sure that the board and I can say the reason we're prioritizing this is because they're so hard to fill.
And I'll mention, just to add on as an example, right now we have 27 speech language pathologist roles. 10 of those are currently vacant.
Yes.
Right. Our counselor roles, we have about 125 and 10 of those are vacant.
Exactly.
So significantly higher percentage of vacancies in these highly specialized roles.
So a question I have, and I'll just throw it out there and we're talking money in terms of compensation. My question is, somewhere in the mix of trying to make things better and more attractive and more supportive, are we doing those, in a sense, non-money things that make life better on the campus for our staff, whether it's an extra 15-minute break or so? That's somewhere in the discussions among staff.
So thank you for bringing that up, because in the Always Learning, we have both monetary and non-monetary incentive. One of them, this board was very supportive when you adopted our new instructional calendar. The new instructional calendar, and I've heard from teachers and faculty, they're really happy because we have increased their planning time and PD time. We have a committee that's looking at the workload for our teachers in terms of reducing. We, under Patty Salzman's leadership, we're looking at the vector training, which all teachers, all like, oh my God, they take so much, and they do, an hour for this, an hour for that. So we are working on streamlining that. That's a state requirement, but we have some flexibility. So today, I want you to assure you, we're talking about the monetary, but I think I'm looking at Alejandra, who's not gonna allow me to lie. I think we have made significant stride and also trying to improve the working condition. Are we there? Absolutely not. But this is something that we are very tirelessly and diligently also trying to address.
So I'm looking at our instructional assistant recommendation on the salary side, and like Trustee Radel, I'm also thinking of the some of the questions I have across, I'm assuming across all of the districts, there's difficulty filling these positions at the same kind of salary level. Like this is a universal struggle.
Yes.
And I'll bet that there's not, I'm just kind of going with it. And so there's not like any particular district that has made any kind of significant strides in finding the right combo of working conditions, salary, qualifications to fill these positions.
Correct.
All right, so we're experimenting like everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my, thank you.
Yeah. Here, Mario. Oh.
I think it's great that we're offering these stipends and looking at these. One thing that, as we're talking about stipends, although this doesn't pertain to next year's budget, but this year's budget, I know like the folks in the disability services who came out and asked for a stipend this year. Is there any way that we can also, make what we pass for this next year, even if it's prorated or something for this year? I don't know what kind of ability we have or what those costs would be, if there's any way. I know they came and asked us for it, so I want to bring it up as if that's a possibility.
Let me see if I understood. Are you saying making it retroactive to this current year?
I mean, I guess I don't know what the budgetary process that we'd have to do that of, but I think when they had come to us several months ago, my sense of time is all screwed up, but they had asked for a stipend for this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what is available for that, or if there's any way to, it's great that we're looking forward, and I think this is awesome, but I don't know if there's any way, there's anything we can do.
No, I would say it's not something I would recommend. You guys have adopted a budget. In order to do that, we're living within that budget. If we were to do this whole plan will be impacted as well, because we're going to create a hole that is greater. So we don't want to do this for this current year. We can do it moving forward. That would be the only thing that I would not feel comfortable.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, I understand. Yeah. And then I
Yeah.
guess I'm also trying to think of like the non-pay
Yeah.
things that they had asked for, like
Yeah.
having devoted space and file cabinets that lock, and maybe things that maybe we can get a commitment on making sure that those things are addressed by
Yes.
the end of the year. But
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, perfect. Then the next one, I want to give you an update, and I also updated Alejandra around this, is teacher supplemental pay rates. This does not have an implication to our budget. So it's an easy thing for you to support. I am strongly recommending, and this will be part of the budget adoption. Right now, our current supplemental pay for our teacher is $30 an hour. We are recommending that we increase that to $40 an hour and keep the $30 only when teachers are doing professional development. We don't make it a difference currently. So if you're going for PD, you get 30. If you're teaching in summer school with kids, you get 30. So we want to recognize the fact that when you're in front of kids and working with kids, it's much harder than when you're just sitting and receiving and learning. So we want to keep the professional development at 30 and increase for the work with teachers will be at $40. That also require us to increase our administrators from 35 to 40 to 45, the increase. It doesn't have an impact on the budget because this is supplemental pay. So let's assume we have $2 million. So we will figure out the number of hours based on that will not exceed the 2 million. So it's just something I think the Alliance supports it. I think it's also another, though it doesn't have an implication, this is another way of showing to our staff that we really value. And I believe it's the right thing to do. The last, yeah, oh, sorry. Where's that? Here.
Not for this year, but I do think when it comes to P-TECH and CTE in particular, there are some districts that extend the calendar so that there's actually more days that they work so that they can get, not have to worry about some of these things.
Yeah.
But those districts do have an expectation that those teachers are in externships and running programs just because of the different
Yeah.
level of work. So I do think at some point we could look at a different staffing calendar
Yeah.
or different calendar for
Thank
those
you.
positions.
Yeah, great point, President Martinez. The last issue is we don't have a cost analysis of this because we're just exploring this, but we are going to bring it for when you do the adoption of the compensation is hard to serve schools. Right now, here's what we are thinking about. There's a small number of campuses that need additional support. The criteria for hard to serve, we're talking about historical pattern of vacancy rates and attrition rate, the substitute fill rates. We're looking at mid-year separation. We're looking at reported student behavior incident. We're looking at the census composite index in terms of poverty. We cannot tell you any school yet. We just want you to know that we will be bringing that to also support, which means anybody who works in those campuses that we identify will get whatever we decide. Everybody who works there will get that above and beyond the compensation increases that the board decides on April 17th. Okay. Then I want to give you this last slide, which is the first slide that that we started with. This is for option 2A, right? Or A2. I'm trying to remember how A2, which is almost a $20 million. We heard some feedback of like, and do the parity for the 4% across the board for a classified. So we will adjust that. We got also some requests from additional information that you want, giving you examples of what this looked for teachers through the longevity and different roles. We will give you all, we took notes on that. What I want to say is this, and then Dottie can do the last slide. Dottie, can you go to the last slide before the question and answer? I want you to remember, if you remember, on 2023, we began with a budget deficit would have been 20 million. We're on track. This increases us to 40 million and puts us, instead of 9 million by 27, 28, it puts us at 14 million. I am comfortable, Dottie's comfortable, my team is comfortable with what we are presenting, but it does create a hole. So my talking points to you and to everybody, I hope you leave excited. This is a good story to tell, that given that our financial situation, we are more or less having a 20 million compensation increase. We are announcing it early. But did this create a hope? But is the right thing to do. The reason I want to be very clear, because some of our elected officials are going to use this against us. It's like, you see, they really don't need Legislate, they don't need more money to pay their staff because San Antonio ISD was able to do it even before we announced. I just want to be clear that we are able to do this because we're doing cuts and it creating a hole. Does that make sense? Because I could see easily, and I have been told by some of our experts, Jaime, you know, the legislative could use this against, but the numbers are very clear. We're creating a deeper hole, but it's the right thing to do.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and yeah. So the takeaway from our last meeting when we were talking about campus autonomy and pushing decision-making down onto the campus leadership was not the takeaway from the media. And we were all left talking about why we don't like books, which was, you know, not a conversation that really progressed anything about what it is we're doing here, this work. So I would really make a recommendation that we talk about, you know, what, in order to preserve our most important relationship with our teachers, this is what, you know, we're losing. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We are putting at the forefront our relationship with our campus personnel, and there are things that we are foregoing.
Yes.
And that should be the thing that our lead, right? We should make the lead.
Yeah. This, like, for me, the talking point is, despite the fact that San Antonio ISD is in a dire financial situation, the numbers show that the board and the administration is taking a stand on behalf of its staff and showing, but that has led them to make difficult decisions by making some cuts and some other places, creating a deeper hole. However, we have a runway, as you can see. It's not that we're not going to have a balanced budget. We will, and we will continue making decisions. We have greater opportunity next year when we have the right sizing conversation to continue addressing some of this. But the fact that in more than 20 years, in dollar amount, in the most challenging time that we are facing, where some of our elected officials are not stepping up, we are standing up for our staff, is the right thing to do. And I felt, I told you, this is a great story. And as a teacher myself, as an educator for 36 years, I am happy that we are in this position, that we're able to do it because of the support this board has given the administration this last 10 months, that has allowed us to make some decisions and do some saving that are now allow us to show our love to all our staff. I wish, and I know every board, I mean, Trustee Garza said it, I wish we could do better right now. But this is, from my position, the best we can do. And I think it is a really unbelievable story. And I want to thank the board. I could not have done it without your leadership, President Martinez, Vice President Sebastian, Trustee Sorensen, Trustee Garza, Trustee Osuna, Trustee Rado, and Trustee Valdez. You deserve the credit. You have been so vocal and challenging. You did it last week, and you challenge us. And we have been this past week trying to meet your desire to show our value to our staff, and we have worked really tirelessly. I thank you for pushing us to do the right thing and stand up. But there are going to be some reduction in services, and and Dr. T and I had talked about this, but this is the right thing to do. So thank you. Then I'll turn it. Oh, you have one more slide before that you want to talk about?
Oh, this one?
Oh, we did
No,
already.
we did.
Oh, we did. So that concludes our budget workshop, unless you have additional item discussion or next step that you want to offer. But I hope you leave, I know we are tired, but I want to see you smiling. This is a great story. It's such a good story. It's a really good story. I think. President Martinez, turn it to you.
Thank you. It is a good story. And I think we are smiling. Yeah. But we still want to make sure that we are listening to our community. And so I think there's a lot of work that all of us have to do to talk with our community members and the people we represent in the next few weeks or so. But you have given us so much information and so much clarity around the decision-making process. And I think all of us really, really appreciate that. I've never felt more prepared for a budget conversation in the 6 years I've been on the board. So thank you for that. So without that, without anything else tonight, there being no, okay, trustee Sebastian.
I just wanted to give credit to Mr. Marcel Page here for being our student. I don't know, you were observing and learning from the student perspective. So thank you. And also to our other students who are here and been here the whole time. So thank you so much for being participating in tonight's discussion.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to thank our students also for being here. We need to get more involved in the process as well as the community. But I wanted to just thank the staff for putting this together. And the only reason I'm not smiling because there's no chocolate cake.
That's all we needed to do.
All we needed.
But seriously,
It's been cut out of the budget.
From now on, guys, it's bring your own dessert to board meetings.
I think the story is powerful, and I was just reflecting, looking back at the data, because when I started, I don't know, 13 years ago, and Tony can remember this, we were 16 or 17 out of 17 school districts in starting teacher salary. I mean, we were at the bottom of the bottom in Bexar County, and so we did elevate along those years to back to the top 5, I believe. So it's good to see us get into this position. But my narrative, and that's why at some point I want to hear the thoughts of the board is: do we want to be the top? Do we want to be number one? Because I remember during our discussion back then, there was conversation to be number one in Texas. And we saw, Highland Park and some other 2 or 3 school districts that were number one in Texas. And why aren't our teachers and staff deserving of, and our students deserving of having the best appreciated workforce in the state of Texas? That's the narrative that I would like to take out to the community. And we know we can't count on the state of Texas. At least not any time in the near future. So short of that, we have to get creative. We have to make hard decisions. And that's where we need the community support. If they are aligned with that narrative of having the highest paid staff in the state of Texas, then that's where some of these other conversations have to begin. So I think it's a great framework to take to the community, and I appreciate the hard work. And I ditto our president's comments about the next step, looking at the supply and demand of resources based on what students want in their school, and not giving them the choices of what's there today, because that's our system. It's okay, students, well, if you want X, Y, and Z, well, this school only has this. But the question should be turned around. What do you want in the next grade level? What do you want at your next school? And if that school has enough of the demand, you reshift that and you redesign that so that we're creating the schools that respond to the demand of the students. And that's where I think we have fallen short, just because of the resources and priorities. But I hope we can get to that level of transformation by next year. So look forward to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And what? Oh, sorry.
I just want to say that I have talked to my community also, and I've told them that they will have to do some cuts throughout the district. And they understand. They understand because they know that we can't be continuing on a big hole. And so I know that teachers and staff are being asked to do more with less. and they're pretty well stressed.
Yeah.
So I think this right here, and I thank you, Jaime, Dottie, all the staff, the work that you all have done here. It's amazing what you brought to us. So I think that with this right here, they'll understand that we value them.
Yeah.
So thank you
Okay.
again.
And I do want to, I remember one of the speaker last week that mentioned Austin, you know, and say, let's see what that. If you look at either model for teacher pay on page 25, slide 25 or slide 33, we exceed Austin significantly. So I just want to make sure that teacher knows before you decide to go to Austin, look at this data right here because it might not be to your advantage to see. I didn't say that.
Any other comments before we adjourn?
Are we able to get some people from Houston?
Are we able to recruit some
Oh,
Houston?
and staff, yeah. ACM is on that.
ACM's looking
I
at
have to tell you that I've had some administrators reach out. I told President Martinez, given the situation in Houston, like, if you have any opening, we would love to come and join you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time and questions and comments and all of the work that went into preparing for this evening. The time is 7:53 p.m. The date is Monday, March 27th, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.